Gotcha! You probably thought this video was about some anime girl's big boobs, but it was actually me talking about the state of the video games industry! Well, while you're already here, you might as well stick around, grab a seat, bust open a thing of H2O or a bev of your choice. And let's talk about gacha mechanics, and let's talk about gacha on the whole when it comes to the video games industry, because it is a form of monetization that has become a genre in of itself. Some people even call themselves gacha players. And while 10 years ago games like gacha were way less mainstream than they are nowadays, now gacha games vie for contention for community vote for the year out of every game out there. They have gained notoriety, they have gained publicity, and they have gained popularity. So let's talk about gacha. What is gacha? Essentially, gacha is a loot box, in all but name, where you have these things called banners. And in these banners, you can roll for a % chance to acquire the named character of that banner. For instance, in a game that I play, Honkai Star Rail, there are 2 banner characters available right now, Silverwolf and Argenti. The other 5-star characters are just not available outside of a small pool that you may acquire if you fail to acquire the big named character of this banner. Like how some battle passes may be available for a limited time, these characters are also available for a limited time. And if you miss out on acquiring them, you gotta wait until the game company decides to rerun those characters. But what do you get for acquiring those characters? Well, it varies from game to game, but more often than not, you unlock a new character you can utilize in your party. They may unlock new playstyles, different synergies with other characters, or whatever. And you can use that character without restraint whenever you want. But the chances to get these characters can vary from game to game. For instance, in Honkai Star Rail, you are guaranteed a highest tiered character, a 5-star character, every 90 pulls. You can get it earlier, in which case your quote-unquote pity resets. But if you go to the max and you are the unluckiest you possibly can be, and you go to what is called hard pity, at that final pull you are guaranteed a 5-star character. But it's only a 50% chance that you get the one you're actually going for. If you lose the 50-50, you may get one of those other 5-star characters I mentioned there in the smaller pool as a consolation prize, or you may get a weapon or whatever mechanism the game has alongside that. In which case your pity restarts and you have to go to 90, worst case scenario, all over again. But if you lose 150-50, at least in Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact, which are the 2 biggest ones, or 2 of the biggest ones, if you lose 150-50, you are guaranteed to get a banner character the next go around. The next 5-star you gain from that banner will be the big named character. Your luck can go poorly. And the system is designed in such a way where, unless you are extremely lucky, chances are you aren't going to get every character that becomes available one time or the other. Which means if you aren't going to be a big spender or whale and just fork over hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for these characters, well then tough luck. You better plan ahead and plan out who you want to pull for and not waste your pulls unnecessarily. That is what I do since I am a free-to-play player, and I'll get into why I am in a little bit. Now you may be saying, Jmulls, that sounds terrible. Why would anyone play a game like this? Well, for a few reasons. 1, people like anime characters, which is honestly probably the biggest factor for a lot of people. 2, it's basically gambling. And 3 is not necessarily a short point here, and this is where we branch into the discussion where I don't like gacha as an idea. If I had my way, it would be removed wholeheartedly. Just complete delete as a mechanism in the games industry. Just gone. But if you followed my channel, you'll know that my second favorite game of all time is Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And while that game doesn't have any paid gacha, there is gacha in the game in terms of how you acquire the Blade characters. All you do instead is you grind in-game to acquire pulls for those characters. So in essence, I've played gacha games for quite a few years at this point, in one shape or form or the other. And while I fundamentally dislike the practice, I still think a few of those games have some value to them and are genuinely fun and interesting. But they definitely won't appeal to everyone. Now, I've made an honest-to-God effort to try and play quite a few gacha games just to see what they're all about, and the only ones I could ever stick to for an extended period of time are either Xenoblade 2 or hoyoverse games, essentially Genshin Impact, and Honkai Star Rail. Why is that? Well, I tend to find most gacha games are extremely one-dimensional in the gameplay department. And most of the time, the games just play themselves, or you become so powerful because they throw so much at you to produce a sunk cost fallacy to get you to not leave the game, that you just squash everything and there's no actual mechanical variety or gameplay learning curve. There's just nothing there. The game essentially plays itself. And I ran into this with quite a few games. I tried Epic 7, Reincarnation. Nikkei was a little bit better in this department. Final Fantasy 7 Ever Crisis. There was this one dungeon crawling gacha game that I played for a little bit. It was kind of fun, but again, same problem. The gameplay grinds to a halt and essentially becomes extremely easy. And I don't have to think, and those just aren't the games that I tend to like. Whereas in Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail, those games gameplay-wise are pretty fun and interesting. Genshin Impact gives you that same dopamine hit that I got from Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom in terms of exploring this open world. There's a bunch of clear and obvious inspiration from Breath of the Wild when it comes to Genshin Impact, especially when you first start out. And gacha aside, that was genuinely fun and interesting for quite a while. The game works on synergizing various elemental magical spells with one another to create different effects, and I found that gameplay loop fun and satisfying, and the world and story rather engrossing. When it comes to Honkai Star Rail, it's a turn-based game, and while I kind of stomp on most of the game nowadays, there's still some aspects and key avenues that can pose a decent enough of a challenge to me. But also, the core gameplay loop and that element of turn-based strategy that Honkai Star Rail invokes is really fun and satisfying. Managing skill points, trying to go for different weaknesses on the target, balancing different effects. It's simple, I wouldn't call it a hard game, but it's fun and engrossing and I actually have to think. And I like that form of incremental progression that I get over time with building up my roster of characters and being able to slot in different characters for different tasks or activities, or for whatever the fight calls for. I'm not playing that game for like an Elden Ring-esque challenge or whatever, but it's engaging enough in the gameplay department that I find it fun, and then that I can get over my woes about the gacha mechanics because of that. So while many gacha games tend to be extremely simplistic and boring to me, gameplay-wise, there's a couple that do shine, and that brings something palpable and fun to the table. And in terms of being cost-effective, hoyoverse games, you can genuinely play these games free to play and not feel like you're way behind the crowd. Obviously, you're not going to do as much as someone who spends $100,000 on the game, I'm not joking about that. And the game in the gacha is clearly designed to incentivize you to try and spend money, because sometimes you may happen to want a couple of characters that are coming out either at the same time or close enough to each other where there is no fundamental, plausible way for you to gain all of these characters unless you are extremely lucky. I am about to run into that when it comes to the next couple of patches for Honkai Star Rail. And missing out on a character that you find fun and interesting story-wise and gameplay-wise genuinely sucks. It does. And it's a massive put-off for these games for me. By design, gacha is a predatory monetization mechanism with the sole focus on keeping you swiping and spending money on a glorified slot machine to win a PNG in a video game or to unlock entire playstyles that you wouldn't have access to without outrageous luck, doubled with planning and a massive time sink. However, I am also someone who believes in nuance here, and that I can fully accept that I don't like gacha as an idea and I don't want to monetarily support it. However, I think there is something to be said in terms of what I enjoy in having one of these games, for me it's Honkai Star Rail right now, that requires a lot of future planning. Who do I want? How do I want to build up my account and flesh it out over time? I can plan around this stuff. For some reason, I find that enjoyable. And while it coincides and comes alongside something that I fundamentally disagree with and dislike, I can still find some enjoyment out of it. And there's a reason that people go to Las Vegas. There's a reason that people open weapon crates in CSGO or pull for characters in these gacha games. When you get lucky, it can be cool. It's not perfect. And again, I think the games would be way better without it. But for a free-to-play player, or for someone who doesn't want to spend a lot of money or just can't, playing a game like Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail, if you are able to not spend money and control yourself in that regard, can be a lot of game for free, and a lot of quality game time at that. I think one of the biggest kicks in the proverbial penis is when you come back to a gacha game like Genshin Impact, like I tried to do a couple of weeks ago, realized I missed out on a few banners of characters that I think are really cool and that are genuinely a ton of fun, and I just won't be able to get them for like another year. I'm like, you know what, I'm good, I'm out, I uninstalled. That's one of the massive side effects for Genshin Impact, but also these gacha games on the whole. And even not just that, because that's not even enough, as these games allow you to level up the characters, sometimes stacking multiple copies of the same character for the same rate of acquisition to gain additional buffs for that character. You don't get to use the character, at least in the games that I played, 2 times at the same time, you just get a buffed up version of the character you already have. And that is a system designed for the whales. Designed for people that do not care, that just swipe their credit card no matter what, and spend outrageous amounts of money over time on these games. Have you ever wondered why a lot of these gacha games are free to play? Sure, there can be an element that the whales are able to support a lot of people playing for free, essentially, but think about it. If you want to fish for even more whales, how are you going to go about that? Do you have a bigger barrier to entry or a barrier to entry whatsoever? Or do you let everyone into the amusement park and find the people that are going to spend barrelfuls of money on the game and you can keep them around because of that? Well, you do that, of course, obviously, by having a low barrier to entry, or not even a barrier to entry at all. You can play these games on your phone, for God's sake. A swarm of people can start to play the game, and you can find either the whales that already exist, or you can make new whales. And the sad thing is, that works. There's a reason gacha and this formula of gacha has taken such a hold in the games industry. It works. And a lot of people genuinely love these games. That genuinely love games like Honkai Star Rail. I'm one of those people. That love games like Genshin Impact. I used to be one of those people. Or whatever gacha game you can think of. And for me, I will never think gacha is a good system. And if I had my way, I would get rid of it. And I think one of the best things that one of my, if not my favorite series of games ever did, was in Xenoblade 2, remember how I said they had that gacha mechanic with the blades? Guess what they did in Xenoblade 3? They had a similar system to the blades mechanic, but they removed the gacha, and the way you acquired these now heroes was to do quests that you found in the open world, where you learned about these characters, you were introduced to these characters, you developed these characters, and eventually they would join your party. That, to me, is an infinitely, by far and away, no argument to be had, better system than rolling mindlessly and grinding for hours on end for a chance at getting a character that you want. To me, there's no debate, especially when it comes to how predatory gacha can be in terms of monetization, and how outrageously expensive that it can be. And one of the most common arguments that people hear when they make these arguments is that, well, you can play the games free to play. And like I just said, yeah, that's kind of the point, because they are fishing for more whales. Funnily enough, I think Genshin and Honkai become worse games if you whale like that, because the game becomes even more of a joke in terms of difficulty than they already are. But not everyone feels like that. And I don't see gacha going anywhere, because enough people supported handful of cash over handful of cash. Yeah? Money is being made from this system. And I won't be surprised if we see even more games down the line try and incorporate gacha mechanics. We already saw this happen with loot boxes, because yeah, loot boxes are basically gacha mechanics under a different name, or like a different piece of gift wrapping surrounding them. They were pushed back from a lot of mainstream games once before, but I have no doubt in my mind, and I'm under no illusion, that as gacha becomes more and more normalized down the line, and within the next few years, I think more and more companies will try their hand at loot boxes and gacha games all over again, including in games with a base price. Because while I think you can have fun in these games, and that I don't think just because they're gacha games you don't have to play them, I play Honkai Star Rail. I'm going to continue to play Honkai Star Rail because I find the game fun, the story interesting, the characters fun and engaging, and I find the gameplay loop really satisfying. And I like that incremental progression that I make on my account. I played MMOs for years, it's that same scratch on that proverbial itch, for me at least. But what I'm trying to say is not that you should feel bad if you play gacha. That is not what I'm trying to say. What I am trying to say is, be aware of what you are playing. Understand your own limits, wherever those may be, and take into heart that these systems are designed to try and siphon and convince you to spend outrageous amounts of money on something that is almost certainly not worth it. But also keep in mind all of the lessons and mechanisms of gacha if other companies try and go a little bit too far, or try and incorporate it in games with a base price, or try to be too exploitative, too predatory with even these mechanisms. Sometimes a gentle reminder is necessary every now and then, not just for you, but also for me. And maybe I'm making this video as a way to talk to myself in one way or the other. Maybe that's the case if you want to read into it. But every now and then, it's important to just take stock, take a step back, scan the entire scene, and reorient yourself as to where you are in terms of everything else. Be mindful, but have fun, and play the games you like. Just remember, these companies are out to make as much money as possible, and to find ways to bring in more people to spend even more money. That is the goal, that is the end game for these companies. Just look out for yourself. And with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in, my pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, leave a comment down below. Have you ever played a gacha game? Do you still play a gacha game? And which game is it? I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions. And let me know why you play those games. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your perspectives. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. And make sure to leave a like and subscribe and comment down below! And hit the bell icon to be notified when I upload in the future! Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.